so our next speaker is John Canning. John has had over 20 years in video production experience. You've probably read his bio on the site where he's been a videographer for the Vatican, which blows my mind.
When I get drunk, I can tell that.
And Disney, Yahoo, Microsoft. He was a tech evangelist in their home theater division.
Oh, the home media.
Home media. And he was also a product manager for that same team. So before I'll let John talk, right now he's the vice president of Video. So I'm sure you'll be hearing something about that in his talk. But I've got John's song here. So we'll do this real quick.
No.
Yeah.
I just want to see what the video is. Or is there just a song?
Oh, how come the song's not coming? Again. There we go.
Words mean this shit.
World-renowned Hollywood videographer, John Canning.
All right, so I don't know if this is actually, if Kim actually knows this side about me, but it's an interesting choice of song. In my misspent youth, when I spent way too long in college at Georgia Tech, I also subbed as an improv actor at a Renaissance festival. Spent a number of seasons actually being a professional jouster, wearing full armor. So they
that's so funny! What an intuition!
She didn't know that, but that's very funny. Yeah, so there are pictures floating around of me being what I like to call a professional lawn dart, which was I was paid to fall off of a perfectly good horse running at speed wearing full armor. I don't recommend it, by the way, just so you all know. I'm going to call this more the light and fluffy part of the talk. I am going to actually not talk about a single line of code. And we won't actually do programming interfaces because I can't do it as well as David did. So that's the short answer of it. Kim asked me to talk a little bit about various parts of the media that I've been doing and actually the media platforms I've been playing with. And I thought I'd give a little bit of background on some of the things and where I got to this point, which is basically combining my love for digital media and media distribution with content production and creation. The two worlds that I've lived in, as she telegraphed a bit, is I come from a technology background. I have the dubious distinction of ruining most of your lives with cable modems. I worked at Scientific Atlanta many, many years ago and was rolling out cable modems, the first cable modems with that company, going around to cable companies trying to explain to them what this little box connected to cable would actually do for them. I still remember them asking me, and we decided to activate the internet for a backup. We're really not sure what we can do with that, though. Oh, do I have to wear that?
For the movie streaming after, sorry.
All right. Is it attached? Do you have something attached to it?
Yeah, it's hard to see. I'll fix you up.
I'm frightened already. All right, so sounds good. So actually working with cable modems with Scientific Atlanta and a lot of the early digital set-top box technology, I started, actually the other dubious distinction, and I can say this in a crowd full of geeks, and is you probably all remember that video ad that went around for cable modems where they had the painting of the space shuttle picture, and this is your life on dial-up, and this is your life on cable modem. That was me. The very first cable modem demo I took to a cable show was literally they came to me and they said, we've got this thing that we can do high-speed data to a computer, and you're the only one, literally, like one of the few people in the company that actually understood what the web was or the internet was. So this was 94.
right? Like literally they grabbed me out of what I was doing, and they said, look, you know about this internet stuff, right? I said, yeah. Could you figure out what to do with this thing? And I said, what I did is I grabbed, it was back then, it was Sun Netra Systems, threw an Apache web server on there, a Zing video server on there, a real audio server on there, and went up to NASA because that was the only place you could find high resolution imagery to play with. So I literally grabbed a bunch of images from NASA, including that space shuttle picture. We took it to a trade show, and the demo was I set up a modem with a modem pool, and I set up the cable modem, and we would literally do one of these and show people painting that exact picture of the shuttle. So, years later, I'd see TV commercials and go, okay. So that's my random geek cred in the technology space. So after that, I actually went on to do more things related to content. I actually went over to Microsoft shortly after they bought Web TV because I decided it was time to leave Atlanta. I called them up and said, hey, do you need somebody that knows something about cable? They said, sure, come on down. And so from there, I started working on all of Microsoft's media platforms, media delivery platforms. So that includes Microsoft TV, which is their ill-fated attempt to do middleware for set-top boxes. Yes, I've been responsible and involved in most of the random projects that didn't go anywhere. We won't go into that. Microsoft TV, and then Windows XP Media Center Edition, which is actually those screens there, which was actually a terribly progressive product way before its time. So if you're ever familiar with Windows XP Media Center Edition, we basically built a DVR into Windows.
I remember that. It's really impressive.
Yeah.
It was,
Go nowhere.
well, and the biggest challenge we had is when we OEMs, of course the OEMs were scratching their heads and they went, okay, we sort of get it, but we don't know what box to put it in, right? So most of the OEMs are still grappling with trying to put it in an ugly beige box. Slowly you saw PC manufacturers starting to make sexier PCs, if you will. The other problem was access to content. Being one of the biggest problems with that world is, and you probably know this if you've ever touched the content world, the biggest problem we have is rights issues, digital rights. And so we put in multiple tuners into these boxes. We had full data coming in from Tribune for all your electronic programming guide, but still the bane of our existence is we had to IR control a set-top box to decode the video because the cable industry didn't trust Microsoft and PC manufacturers. So they didn't want to allow the ability for a PC to decode the conditional access on that. There was a stint with something called Cable Card, and I'm here to tell you it was a battle royale for Microsoft and the PC industry to actually get a PC to be allowed to decode using the cable card. Now I've also pointed out that you should never be working on the same thing that I am at the same time because it's bad. Work on the opposite thing. So here, follow me on this one. Well, I'm bad. I leave that. I go to work on over-the-top boxes, and that time, for a brief period of time, that was evil and bad. And PCs were cool and good for television. For example, today you go get Hulu, and you go get Hulu Plus subscription. You can actually watch more video on your PC than you can on, say, an over-the-top box or an iPad, because the PC is good, iPad bad when it comes to rights. So it just, again, when I worked on PCs, video was bad on PCs. Now it's good. When I worked on over-the-top boxes and other devices like that, video on those was bad and PCs were good. I've just decided I can't win. And sadly, I have another presentation that I usually do called The Future of Digital Media, or Why the iPad Sucks. But that's just my bane of my existence, that I can't actually watch most of the channels I want to watch from Sci-Fi program, from the Sci-Fi channel on the iPad because of rights restrictions. I can watch them on here, but I can't watch them on the iPad. Long story. But I spent a bunch of time actually starting to do production work. And this is an example of one of the interactive television shows we did actually on the platform, where we were hooking up the PC and we said, well, wait a minute, if we're bringing video through this thing and we're bringing the internet through this thing, why not combine those at the last minute? And so what we started doing was basically interactive television, where we didn't care what the cable company did. We didn't care what all the pieces between the television and the content producer did, because we combined it at the last minute. So ABC Television, who could have never done some of these projects early on because they couldn't get the cable operator to pass the data through the system or the satellite guy to pass the data. We just said, we'll take video that you guys are already producing. They produce an interactive piece that when you hit a button, to this L screen, and you could play along with this TV show, and it was all done by combining the data and the video data at the last. So we started doing different production actually activities along that, and I was responsible for being the evangelist for most of the services that showed up on the early days of the media center. So I got to work with folks like Napster and MovieLink and Cinema Now, some of those first guys that were really trying to do that media production. Then I started traveling the world for various MSN, MSNBC, and started shooting in different parts of the world. This was Libya, and then going into places like Papua New Guinea, and actually doing digital storytelling, shooting in the field, producing with a team, usually relaying over a BGAN satellite if we didn't have internet connectivity, back to Microsoft. Later on we did this for Yahoo, where we would publish these stories. So this was early days of really video being reasonably viable on the internet as an entertainment. Most of this was photography, but we started doing video, but it's still, we were dealing with, postage stamp size video, still a lot of dial-up. Still the argument was, well, how many people in dial-up could get this, right? So it was that kind of time where dial-up was still a big issue if you were going to actually put out something on the internet. So for me, it's been the passion and the love around bringing these two worlds together. Like I said, in Yahoo, I was actually a digital media producer. The reason I left Yahoo, Microsoft, was because somebody called me up one day and said, would you like to travel the world and take photographs for a living? To which I actually said yes, believe it or not. That wasn't a hard choice, by the way, just for those people out there. And started producing this series called The Richard Banks Adventures, where we literally were basically producing from the field 5 days of media, so 5 continuous days. We would shoot for about 2 weeks, but we started publishing within the 3rd day. So we would shoot, edit, create, push up over a satellite or an internet link to our editor, who would then take it, publish it in the format. Typically, each day was 1 to 3 videos, a couple minutes of length, about 40 photographs, and about 1,500 words in text. And so we were doing all of that from Thailand, Bosnia, Macedonia, Rwanda, Israel, some other random esoteric places. But really playing with this whole notion of what can we do as journalists, as digital journalists, what can we do to treat this not as a broadcast medium, but an interactive medium. So we started throwing out questions to the audience, asking people to kind of interact with our reporting. Still early days with this. This was 2005, and it was still we were still not getting enough of the interaction with the audience on that. Still a lot of just producing stories and pushing. Then I went on after that, looking at from a production sense, doing something Green Living Project, where we're actually shooting green and sustainable stories. So I shot about 19 mini documentaries in 7 African countries in about 2 months, which I don't recommend.
Yeah.
By the way, it's a lot of work, but it was very cause-related organizations. So coming in, shooting the video stories, actually creating these little mini documentaries in different countries in Africa. So it was everything from animal issues to conservation to energy to people, and helping different folks tell their stories. Go for it.
Who paid for it?
And see, I love that question. So.
How'd you fund your adventures?
Yeah. No, that's just, I was waiting for somebody to go, wait a minute. I'm not doing it. No, it was a good question. It was a startup project. And I'm here to tell you that if you want to go anywhere in the world and shoot something, I can almost get you to do it for free anytime. actually get paid to do it. So in this case, we were actually working with the organization. So on the ground, most of my on-the-ground costs were taken care of. They would house me, they would feed me, they would transport me. And then what we had to do is get sponsorship to get air. And we were actually, and I was with the project to help start the project, and I was with it for about 1.5 years. Really what we were starting to do was get in both sponsorship and also doing this as really work for hire. So a lot of these organizations do have marketing budgets, quite frankly. They're not huge, but they do need to tell their story, and they do need somebody to help tell their story. So typically what we would have to do is combine a number of projects together. Once you fly to Africa, once you spend the cost of getting to Africa, it's relatively easy to move in and around there. If you can work with one organization in Uganda, have them drive you across the border to Rwanda, which we did. So it was a combination of things. You will not get rich doing this, by the way, because again, with the digital media revolution, almost any idiot with a camera and a desire to do something and to shoot something can do the good enough strategy. Right? If you look at what has happened to digital photography and stock photography, that business has really taken gone on hard times simply because you have digital photography. And it's the good enough theory, which means that if you look at any major magazine today, any travel magazine and things like that, you would be amazed how many photos are sourced out of Flickr for free. Because there's some photo editor who says, I just need a cheap and cheerful shot of the Golden Gate Bridge. Goes to Flickr, finds a photo, asks the photographer, who is giddy and excited that somebody actually noticed that their photo was decent, and they say, can we use your photo? And they go, sure, give me credit. And off they go for a free photo, right? Which makes all the professional photographers go, oh. So it's been a really interesting level set. The same thing goes with video. And a lot of the travel properties, quite frankly, a lot of the travel tour organizations in the world are like, well, I can just give my guide a lot of that material, and some of it makes your eyes bleed. Some of it makes you sick because you're like, really, hold that camera still for the love of God. Please stop that. But there is some stuff, and quite frankly, some stuff that's in the moment and immediate that they can capture that is good stuff. And so you're seeing a lot of that start to happen. So the world of getting paid to travel the world and produce that media, it's kind of tough. You're either develop the reputation as a shooter that can go and capture those kind of things, and you get your jobs with the BBCs and the Discoveries of the world, or you have a lot of people that are shooting on spec and then hoping somebody then goes and pays them for it afterwards. So fortunately, I can't give you the golden secret on how to change your job description and start doing this.
There's a guy, Trey Ratcliffe, I don't know if you've heard of him.
I know, yeah, Trey.
Stuck customs, he seems to be able to, I guess he does that.
Yeah, I love Trey, right? Like, you look at what Trey Ratcliffe,
If you're not familiar with Trey Ratcliffe, and you can go look up his site, he shoots a photo a day, usually heavily doctored, right? So he's the king of HDR. And I'm sure there's other people, but go look up Trey Ratcliffe. He produces beautiful imagery. Most of it looks heavily doctored, and you can go fit into which do you like photography that looks like the original image, or do you like photography that looks, and I love his stuff as well. What Trey did was basically come up with a gimmick, and it's a gimmick, and I like what he's done. He's shooting a photo a day, and he basically cornered this sort of market on producing this photo a day, becoming the HDR guy, producing guides on it, and he is making money on it. And I'm sure we can pick any sort of profession in that area. If you look at Freddie Wong, and his partner here in LA, 2 kids, don't think they're over 25 years old, out of film school, are now living solely on their videos on YouTube. And you should go look at them, because these guys are great at special effects. And they produce, was it Full Metal Cat? It's actually kind of a funny video. Freddie Wong. These guys produce some brilliant stuff, and they're just like week after week cranking out these videos and special effects. And they started getting millions of views, and then they started getting sponsored. And of course, YouTube is paying them because they're drawing a ton of traffic. And now they're professionally producing videos for game companies. and things like that. They built it into an empire. So it is amazing, and people can find a niche. Like Trey, any number of photographers could who captured a niche and did it. And now it's hard to, it's like, oh shit, I could have done that. Why didn't I think of it?
I think he gets his funding through his blog because he gets
Absolutely.
huge traffic through his blog.
He gets huge traffic. He's got sponsorship, and he produces a ton of educational material too that he sells.
I met a guy at another meetup who goes to, was telling me that during the Libyan war, he was a stringer for CNN. He basically went there with a DSLR and a little GoPro camera on his chest, and he was running around with the rebels, getting shot at.
Yeah, and
I guess he was making a living off of that.
I'd be interested to see if he was really making a living off of that, because a lot of the news organizations don't pay that well. And this is another problem as we sort of wildly diverge in this conversation. There is a bit of controversy now that is starting to happen, go back to rights issues. It used to be that, hey, if you shot something, if you saw a natural disaster going on, you shot the photo and you put it up, and news agencies said, hey, can we use that? And you go, sure, that's great. Well, the problem is that news agency is actually selling your image, right? CNN is actually, I think it was CNN got in trouble for this, because they then go license the thing that you gave them and are making a lot of this on it. And a lot of people who are doing the eyewitness reports and things like that are starting to realize that and say, wait a second, I am not necessarily going to just give away my prize photo or my prize chunk of video to a news organization who then is going to actually make a serious amount of bank on it. And so what we're seeing is this now citizen journalism aspect is taking a slightly different turn as people are starting to also realize that while it was Good Samaritan, I'm submitting this and things like that, there are other organizations that are making good money on it, and they feel like they should be making a little bit as well. And I can't argue that. It goes back to digital rights. How do we tag and attribute to pieces of media, and how do people actually get money for that value of that media? So part of the world that I tend to spend a lot of time in as well. I did it in the set-top box arena, in over-the-top boxes, where I spent a chunk of time licensing, helping over-the-top box companies license services. So this is basically pre-Boxy time frame, if you will. So working with this little company, but actually going out there, helping them license different services, talking to the CBSs and the NBCs of the world as they started to wrap their heads around this thing called, over the top, and how they wanted services to go out. Any number of these companies, some of them smaller and some of the bigger companies, the Netflix of the world and all, really grappling with well, now we have everybody showing up with a box. What are the rules for us giving them or letting them have the content across the box? And Netflix went absolutely crazy, and they eventually had to tighten it down a bit. Amazon, thinking about how do they put their video service and things like that. Major League Baseball, believe it or not, great people to work with. God, they had the right attitude, right? Major League Baseball went, wait a minute, if we can put our subscription service on everything, it has to meet a quality bar, we are perfectly happy people. NFL, good luck. You want to talk to the NFL? Walk in the door with about $100 million. Just sadly how it kind of works in that industry. And also the interesting thing is that the NFL doesn't actually own any of the game video. The team, yeah. That's why the football world is such a weird world, is they don't actually own the video of the gameplay. The teams own that. So then you would have to do actual deals with each. It's ugly.
College football?
College football is easier, I think. I have not dealt with the college football as much as NFL. NFL is a very tricky beast.
It's hard to find college games on this.
Well, because also that's again a rights issue of they have no incentive to put it on the web because of the amount of money that is licensed by TV stations. The TV stations give them why. It's basically a good friend of mine who teaches couple of USC courses and also works at Hulu, gives a talk about digital rights and calls The best statement I've ever heard about digital rights is this. Rights are infinitely divisible. So the rights to a piece of content, if I'm the content holder, means that I can slice it and dice it as many ways as I feel like. And that's what the TV industry is about. The TV and film industry is about. Rights are infinitely divisible. And as soon as you understand that, now you understand the nightmare that is distributing digital media. You understand why Hulu can put content on this different, and it is treated differently. I don't know if this is still, I think this is still the sign. So if you go into an iPad and you have Hulu Plus, go look for Fringe, which is, I think that's an NBC show. Or pick your favorite sci-fi channel. Any number of them will come up and say, only available on the web. Wait a minute. iPad. Isn't that sort of the web? No. This is considered the web. But some lawyers decided, and they've done that attribution that way. So, a number of these things that I have kept banging on have led to what, again, another storytelling and somewhat the geeky aspect of where we can talk about this, which is I started working with this company. I spent about 6 months consulting at Disney, helping them, this whole thing called Disney Studio All Access, or DSA, which is Disney's version of Ultraviolet. Anybody heard of
The way that they're using to let you download stuff to your PC?
Sort of, yes and no. So Ultraviolet is an industry consortium, and it was called, I forget what the name was before, but it was DECE, I think was the name before that, something really friendly. They called it Ultraviolet. They, being every studio except for Disney, a bunch of hardware manufacturers, all banded together and said, look, the consumer is really upset. They buy a piece of content and they can't watch it everywhere. So if you rent a piece of content online, or you go buy a DVD and you want to go play it, or you buy a DVD and then you're really pissed off, you're like, I own the DVD. Why can't I download it online? Because I own it. Look, here it is. So Ultraviolet was this concept that says, if we can give you the rights to a particular piece of content, you buy a DVD, I don't know, Spy Kids. I didn't mean to out you here, but he's a fan of Spy Kids. He's got the entire collection. He's a good friend of Robert Rodriguez. He's got Spy Kids. He buys that. And he says, you know what? Now I own Spy Kids. And sure enough, there's a digital rights locker in this guy that says he owns Spy Kids. And so if he goes to somebody else's service, logs in with his ID, they say, oh, you own Spy Kids. Well, here you go. Oh, you want to download Spy Kids? Here you go. You want to make a digital copy of Spy Kids? Here you go. It sounds good in theory, and that is what they're attempting to do. Last time I checked, there was like 3 DRM companies involved and things like that. But that is between retailers like Best Buy, Walmart, Target, those people like that, the online services. I don't think Netflix is involved. Blockbuster was involved. All the major studios, except for Disney, are all working on this concept called Ultraviolet. You can actually go and look it up and sign up today. But it's this concept of a digital rights locker in the sky that allows a consumer, hopefully, to say, I own this piece of content, therefore I should be able to do different digital things with this piece of content. I own the digital rights. I've leased the digital rights, pardon me. In the content industry, there is this notion, and I hate to break it all to you, you do not own any piece of content. You have a lease on that piece of content for a very long time. Because the content industry realized when you buy something, they're not actually selling you the rights. You do not own that song. You own the right to play that song, and you have an extended lease to that song, but they are not assigning rights. Spinning for days. I forget what they call it, but it's some esoteric acronym for, we're going to loan you this piece of media for a very long time when you've bought it. Go figure. Ultraviolet is that. Disney created their own version. I spent a good chunk of time over there with them because they're Disney and they can do that. creating a system where basically the idea of a rights locker in the sky, if you bought a piece of content from, say, Apple, and it was a Disney title, could you go up to Disney's site and go ahead and hey, you own that piece, you bought it on Apple, great, you can watch it on an Xbox. That's the theory. Still manifesting it. So believe it or not, given that it was still manifesting, it was supposed to ship in September? Yeah. Here we are today. Be that as it
Say
may.
what year?
Oh, good point. Good point.
Software.
Good point. Yeah, I've been through that cycle before. So one of the things that I actually joined some friends of mine who had a little startup called, there was a precursor to this, it's now called WeVideo. WeVideo started its life as an educational product in Norway for K through 12, video editing platform for K through 12, believe it or not. So they have about 300,000 K through 12 students in Norway, which, if you know the population of Norway is roughly 5 million, is pretty much every student on a video editing platform. So instead of writing an essay necessarily in school, they can make a video. The team actually started looking at, okay, let's productize this and let's roll this out. So what is it? WeVideo is cloud-based, in the browser, hardware independent, creative expression and easy to use, collaborative, one-click publishing, video editing platform. So we are a cloud-based video editor. Now, there's probably going to be a whole lot of harums and guffaws, but it actually does work. And so I'll demo it in a bit. But what we did is basically have hosted in Amazon, so we're hosted in the S3, works in any browser, Flash-based video editing platform. And so that's what the kids were using. We've actually expanded it, also made it collaboration into there. Something that I'm proud of, and I'm sorry she left before I could tell her about
I
that.
was just thinking that.
Is we signed with somebody like the Cutter Foundation. So I have a pilot program with them with a group of kids in Chicago, working with a group of kids in Doha that are collaboratively editing in a couple of different groups stories about water conservation. So they're all just signing in, uploading their media, working back and forth together. As you can imagine, this is start talking about integrating into websites and things like that. That is one of the aspects of what we've been doing. So, switch. Thank you. So this is actually the product, and we've got two aspects of the product. And one of the big jobs that I have right now is that we are in the midst of actually defining an API set. So we launched the product, the full version in the browser, and then we also did in the fall an integration with YouTube. So we're on this path of defining an API set to allow other companies to take our editing platform, embed it into their websites as a part of their workflow. So we launched it into general consumer. Anybody can go there. It's a freemium model. You can sign up for free, then you can just pay for more storage, resolution, that sort of thing. But we also started working with a lot of companies, and this is where we're headed, which is integrating that into other people's workflow. So obvious areas of, if you look at everything, all the video delivery platforms today, if you look at the Brightcoves, the Kalturas, the Uyalas, the platform, so on and so forth. All of them are content management solutions, content delivery solutions. None of them have a robust editing experience. And so that is an area that we can step into. Dealing with live streaming, so editing on live streams. So being able to take a Ustream stream and then go in there, edit it, add in, say, text, graphics, and then continue to ship it out. So part of what we've been doing is this aspect of opening it up, letting people collaborate together, tell stories together, and also be able to publish. So just a little bit about it. This is the product, and I'm running it in Chrome. Sorry, Kim. If I go back for a second, now I hope that I have lost my, oh good. my blazingly fast internet connection, thank you to the little MiFi that he's sitting next to. So basically this is it. I've logged in. I've got a dashboard of a bunch of different projects that I've worked on. Some projects other people have owned. Some projects that I've created. As you can see, we're in the X Games project here, and I have any number of people that have been invited into this project. In fact, my account has actually been invited into it. And then what you see up here are all different iterations and edits that people have come in, grabbed this thing, and started editing one version of this. What we're doing is you upload the media into the cloud, you the consumer. And there are a couple of different ways to do that, but basically point at files, start uploading it. What we do is when we get it into the cloud, we create proxies. So we take, and there's about 30 different codecs we support. You can upload 1080p material, I don't really care. What we do is we create low resolution proxies of that. So what we see in this environment is the low res versions of it. And the reason we do that is because we want to give a snappiness and a response to your editing. So, and it's progressive download. We can actually turn on streaming, but we're actually doing the progressive download. So what you just saw there was that little loading screen. It's grabbing the proxies. So all this is actually high def material, so my guys, but it basically gives me this kind of response when I'm editing, it basically gives me the look and feel of a non-linear editor, but it happens to be so. If I expand out the timeline just a bit more, oops, and when good, Apple mice go bad. So it's a drag and drop mentality. Let me grab, it has, if I feel like grabbing other things, just dropping them in here, I can drop them in there. Effectively, you have the feel of a nonlinear editor without having all the hardware requirements, without all of the storage requirements. The rendering is, I do the rendering, the system does the rendering on the back end, so any kind of graphics that I drop in, I'll do completely inappropriate graphics. So we basically don't have any rendering time because all we're doing is building an instruction set here, right? So we build in editing parlance an EDL. We create that EDL, and so when I go ahead and save it, then I'm going to push those instructions back to our rendering farm. And from there, we will do rendering on that and export. So again, once I've decided, this for somehow is my masterpiece and I want to export it, Magnus is going to load this when he sees it. I've got the option, this account, I can do, this account 720p. If I want to do, and this is for the consumer version, if I want to do a 1080p, it's a one-time fee. I'll just keep it at 720. And what we've done is done a bunch of the hooks to various services. So I, as a consumer, can go ahead and, in this case, I can hook it up to an FTP site if I want to. So this is, this is a commercial version of our platform, but you're done. A few minutes later, depending on how big the file is, depending on the backlog in one of the services, it shows up in any one of your services. So what we've done is streamline the production. For business, so for the consumer, hey, could be a cool, fun platform. A lot of the bloggers actually are starting to pay attention to this because as opposed to, say, iMovie, which is a perfectly fine program, if you're running iMovie on an older Mac and you start ingesting HD content, you could spend a month of Sundays rendering, or your Mac just falls over. Both makers the same thing. So depending on how sophisticated you are, what kind of work you're doing. But we also, from the collaboration standpoint, I worked with a couple of different teams at CES. So some guys from Network World, Tech Zulu and things like that, they had a bunch of people running around shooting. What they were doing is they would upload and another person would sit there, just log in, see what they've uploaded, create their stories, and publish out. So just a mixing and matching, the collaboration, the storytelling aspect of it. That is some of the fun things we're doing. Now, I'm happy to talk more about this, but I also realize that it is almost 9 o'clock, and I wouldn't do that too. So I'm happy to sit here and answer any questions you guys want. Kim wanted me to give a bit of an introduction. Those people that want to actually start playing with this, we do not have an API published yet. You can go up and get an access to the free service. I will soon have a developer kit, looking at about a month, where people would actually be able to go and pull this into a system, plug it into other systems, so people can actually start playing with it on a more native basis. Again, I'm happy if people want to know more about the guts of it to talk about it, but thank you for your time.
Thank you, John.